Hi, in this short video, we're going to have a look at how you can integrate Liquibase with DBmarlin. And Liquibase is a way of applying schema changes to your databases in a structured, versioned manner. And DBmarlin is an observability tool to measure the performance of your database, but it can also ingest change information from tools like Liquibase. By installing this integration, what will happen is that anytime schema changes get applied through Liquibase, Liquibase will then post an event to DBmarlin to make it aware of that change. And then what you can do is look at the impacts on the performance of that change. Two things you'll need to start with are a working Liquibase installation. It needs to be the Liquibase Pro, which means you'll need a license key applied, and it needs to be version 4.20 or later. You can get a 30-day license trial from liquibase.com if you don't already have the Pro version. And then the integration itself is a jar file, which you can get if you follow the link here. That will take you to GitHub, and you can download the latest version here. The code for the integration is on GitHub as well, if you wanted to look at that. Once you've got that jar file, that needs to go into your Liquibase lib directory. And then after that, there are some Liquibase properties that need to be added. So first of all, you need to have a Liquibase license key to unlock the Pro version. And you need to have the structured logging enabled, because it's this structured logging, which is how DBmarlin is able to get the messages that it needs to send. And then there are 4 settings here for DBmarlin itself. So we'll go through these step by step, but you need the DBmarlin URL, the instance ID, API key, and event type ID. And once this is working, this is what it will look like. Liquibase change events will appear on the events history screen. They'll also appear on the events tab when you're looking at a specific instance. And they'll also appear on the timeline when you look at any performance charts. You'll see annotations that show when changes are applied, so you can see whether there is any impact on the performance. So we'll walk through this step by step. We'll have a look at these settings and what needs to go in there. So if I jump over to my server where I already have Liquibase installed, if I do Liquibase minus version, you can see I have the correct version here, 4.20. It is the Pro version. I've got a license key already applied. And in this case, you can see the DBmarlin jar file is already been loaded within the lib directory here. So that's step one. The next thing then is to customize your Liquibase properties file. So in this case, I'm just going to open. You've got the standard things at the top, which are connection to the target database where these schema changes are going to be applied. In this case, I've got a Postgres database. The next thing is the 4 DBmarlin settings. So the first one of those is the DBmarlin URL. That needs to include HTTP or HTTPS, and then either the host or IP address and port number, so that it can make an API call to that endpoint. The next thing is the instance ID. I'll show you on the DBmarlin side how you can get your instance ID. So in this case, it's this Postgres 13 instance. If I click into it, instance ID is basically the number that you see in the address bar here. So 10 in my case. So that was the next thing I needed to put in there. So 10 as my instance ID. The next thing is the API key, which is just the base 64 encoded username, password. You only need this if you have authentication set up on your DBmarlin server. If you don't, you can just skip this one. But otherwise, you would need to get your username, password, run that through base64 encode, and then paste that in here as your API key. And then the last thing is the event type ID. So if I go back to DBmarlin, I'll show you where you can find that. So settings, event types. There are a number of event types that you get out of the box. The Liquibase changes on one of those. So you could use one of these, but normally I'd recommend creating a new one for Liquibase. So I create a custom one. I'm going to call it Liquibase change. And then you can set a custom icon for this as well. We do provide the Liquibase icon, and that is the icon code. So you can see if you paste that in there, you get a Liquibase icon. So now if I hit create, Liquibase change with the icon, and you can see the badge showing 0, which means we've not had any custom events of that type sent to us yet. The next thing you need to do is you need to refresh this page now. This is important because this is a newly created one. So once you've refreshed it, you now go edit, this is where you can now get the ID. So again, from the address bar, it's the number that you see there. So in my case, 8 is my event type ID that corresponds to this. So I go back over here into our Liquibase properties, and I need to change that to an 8. And there I say, that's everything that's required. So the next thing I need to do is apply my Liquibase change. So I'm just going to invoke the Liquibase command line. I'm using a specific change log. Within this change log, I've just got some simple create table, drop table. And if I do use the label here and then do update, that will drop all tables. So I'm running this. You can see now it says Liquibase command successful. And you can see, and if I scroll up here, some of the commands that were run there. So drop table of exists. Example, big table was one of the things. Now, in this case, you can see unable to update DBmarlin response code 401. 401 means not authorized. So in this case, we've actually got the API key is wrong. So I'll just go away and correct that. And then we'll come back and try that again. Okay, so I've now updated my username and password, base64 encoded again, and updated that API key. So hopefully it should be the right one now. So if I retry that Liquibase command again now, you can see it's gone through. It's completed the Liquibase steps again. And then I scroll up. This time, what you're looking for is this message here, DBmarlin successfully updated. So that's good. That means it has been able to send an event to the DBmarlin URL with the details of these changes here. So in this case, we should see something that looks like this, drop table, if exists. So if I head over now into my DBmarlin and I go into my Postgres 13 and I just refresh to look at the last hour, you see right at the end here, that icon above the timeline there with a number 2 means that there were 2 changes detected within that minute. If I go to my events tab, I can see what those changes were. They've come through as Liquibase changes with the icon. These are the custom event type that we set up. And now you can see the details of the change. So the change set that was used, the specific commands within that change set, whether they were successful, you can see who ran them. So it was me, how long they took, 34 milliseconds, and you can see the SQL text. So we had a drop table here, and then we had another table here. So this is where you see the information. If you left that a little while, you could then, wait till time shifted on and see whether there was any impact on database performance as a result of that change. But you can also, if you go to the event history screen, you can filter here on Liquibase changes, and you can see them here. And this will be across all instances rather than just looking at the one specific instance. And then the other thing you can do as well, if you want to look at performance impact of this, is go into here, and you can then use the comparison reports. So got 2 comparison reports over here. So if you waited a little bit of time and then looked at a period of time before the change and after the change, you could then see whether there was an impact on performance as a result of your schema change. So hopefully that's useful. If you want to get started, I'd say this is probably the best place to start, docs.dbmarlin.com, and then just search for Liquibase integration in there, and that will find this page. And then from here, you have links to all the other things that you might need there. If you get stuck along the way, reach out to us, and there's various ways of getting in touch. We have a community Slack channel. We also have an email and other ways, live chat through our website. So yeah, give this a try. Let us know how you get on, and look out for more videos coming soon.